Okay, well, I've decided that now is a pretty good time to record the next um, on writing and such, or the first one of the yet another reboot, if you will. So, what I'm going to do is um, I'm actually doing a little writing. I'm working on Stranger. Good luck if you can read that. I can barely read my handwriting sometimes. I'm sitting here at my desk. Um, that is some music playing on the stereo. It's shuffling between some Neil Diamond, some Bruce Springsteen, Harry Chapin, Billy Joel, Jackson Brown. It's just shuffling through it. Um, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it and do a little talking about what I write, why I write, and just my general philosophy about writing itself. And hopefully, I'll be getting into doing this a bit more frequently than whenever the mood strikes me. So, just for a little background, first, I've been writing, well, I've actually been writing since about 1975. I wrote some truly horrendous, emphasis on horrendous, Space 1999 fan fiction. Now, of course, I didn't know what the fan fiction, the term fan fiction, all those years ago. But yeah, they were short, quick little stories. I think the longest was like a couple of pages. So but I would write. I don't even know what inspired me to do it. I just started writing. So, and before anybody asks, no copies exist. Just don't ask. Don't go looking. They're not online anywhere. Because if I'm right, all copies were lost in 1988 when we had a house fire. So there. Just readjusting the camera a little bit also. And from 75 through 77, I wrote some. But nothing really serious. So I kind of plugged away at it, and then 1977 rolled around, and a little movie you may have heard of called Star Wars. Excuse me. Little movie you may have heard of called Star Wars. This was when it first came out, before it was Episode 4, A New Hope, when it was just Star Wars. And the day after Star Wars premiered, I started writing seriously. And I'm not going to deny it, that first thing was a ripoff of Star Wars. It was the first serious thing I wrote. And again, all copies have been destroyed, although several character names still exist, and I'm still looking for a story to put them into. And so I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I eventually started coming up with my own stories. But I wasn't enjoying myself. It wasn't fun. It was work. And then, by then I was in high school. And then, in 10th grade, I had the good fortune of being in Marcia Slatkin's 10th grade English class. She was actually the first person to actually support me in writing, who actually encouraged me to write. And because of her, I never stopped writing, and now I'm well beyond the point where I can even think about stopping. I mean, I could stop for a few days. It's actually been a few days since I've worked on Stranger, and after tonight, tomorrow I've got editing to do on Wanderer, so I'm not gonna be writing much after for a little while. Anyway, so I wrote and 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 I kept writing, and then I wrote some more, and then I wrote some more, and then I got up the nerve to start sending things out. And what an adventure that was! I got torn apart by Ben Bova. I lost the rejection slip, but it was it was a bad story. I mean, in his position, I would have rejected it also. But essentially, he said, find something else to do with your time. It's not something you want to tell somebody who's just getting out. It's like one of the first things I ever sent out. So. But still, I tried, and I kept going, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. And I finished stories, but the problem is, I'm easily distracted. If you may notice, I keep looking up at my monitor, because I'm easily distracted. Television's over there, and I keep looking at it, as you may have noticed. Food Network, I'm sorry. Anyway, but I kept writing anyway. Nothing, by that point, nothing could stop me. Nothing could stop me from writing. So, at that point, I got into the groove that I still continue in today. I work very slowly. And also, that's when I developed my bad habit of trying to get it right the first time. Hanging here over my desk, I have a sign, something that I found on Pinterest. First drafts don't have to be perfect, they just have to be written. Or as I like to say it, they just have to be finished. My problem is, I am trying to get it right on the first draft. I mean, technically it might be possible for a first draft to be worthy of publication. Unlikely, but I suppose it is possible. It's a story that says that Kurt Vonnegut would write a page and edit that page until it was ready for publication. Now, that would mean that he would spend days on one page, and there would be a wastebasket full of copies of the same page, but by the time he finished with that page was ready to go. I'm not that I can't do that. If you look through my notebooks, you'll see paragraphs crossed off. I'll write a paragraph, decide, okay, I don't like the way that one, cross it off. Write the same paragraph, cross it off again, write it over, change one word, cross it back, go back to the original version. There are some pages where there's like one small paragraph and the rest of it is just crossed out. So, what I do, this is how I write. I write everything out by hand. Yes, I know it's backwards, but I write everything out by hand on spiral-bound notebooks. I have a shelf in the closet full of completely used spiral-bound notebooks. Pen, black ink, always black ink. It's easier. I see black ink better than I see blue ink. And I write everything out by hand. I have to print because my cursive is so bad I can't read it. You know your handwriting's bad if you can't read it. and I just write. This is the first draft. I'm not concerned with anything on the first draft. Get the story down. This is the essential foundation of the story. Everything is built onto this. Once the first draft is finished, it gets all typed up, saved on a Word file, and it sits on my computer for a minimum of 6 weeks. Once 6 weeks rolls around, I print it out, and I do a very detailed edit, line by line, word by word, paragraph by paragraph, page by page. There are some pages that look like they're completely covered in red ink, and a lot of them are. For this.
And then became one. Well, except for the names.
And then when the editing's finished, I update the file on the computer, and then it sits for another 6 weeks. And I do that minimum 4 times. Some stories take a little bit longer. The most recently published book, Brianna and the Three, it ended its long and tortured path to publication with about 8 editing passes, and it was worth it because it's a much better story now after all the editing than it was. So. And since I self-publish, after I'm satisfied with the story, then I make the cover. I find public domain images. Use a couple of different photo editing programs. Nothing too sophisticated. I can't afford Photoshop. And I don't have the patience to learn something like GIMP. I would love to, but I don't have the patience for it. This is also one of the reasons why I've never got into 3D art. I don't have the patience to sit here and learn how to do it. I would like to do it, but I don't have the patience for it. So I use things like Picasa and a couple of others that allow me to put the images together and run them through filters until I get what I think encapsulates the feel of the story, and then get the title on, get it formatted, add things like dedication, introduction. There's a page I always put in there that says where I got the images for the cover from. Even though they're public domain, I always like to credit the websites that I found them in, and then it gets submitted. Smashwords, Amazon, CreateSpace, Lulu. Yeah, those are the 4 main ones. Smashwords also distributes to Barnes & Noble and iTunes, iBooks, actually. So that's the ins and outs of what I do. Now, getting into specific, most of the time I have no idea what's going on. I don't plan stories out. I know there are people out there who will say, and several have told me, that there is no way I can write the way I do, even when I'm sitting there in front of them and writing. See, the way my mind works, it's constantly turning over the plot line, looking at, okay, this is where we are, this is where we want to go, but what would be a better way to get there, or what would be a more interesting way for the plot to go. So, that's why I don't use plot outlines, because I'd be constantly revising the plot outline. What I will do from time to time is I'll just make notes. Just general idea, okay, this is what happens in the next scene, this is what happens in the scene after that, this is what happens in the scene after that, and this is how the story ends. Sometimes I'll do that just so that I can kind of say, okay, this is generally speaking where we're going. It may not go there, but I know where it's going to end. Like, for example, with Stranger, I knew the beginning, and I know the end. Everything in the middle is what I'm trying to figure out now. And I'm about 2/3, 3/4 of the way through it, so it shouldn't be too much longer. It's just that I'm thinking I might have written myself into a corner, but I'll see if I can work that out. The other good thing about self-publishing is that I'm not on a timetable. There's nobody saying, you really have to get this book finished. Well, there's a little voice in the back of my head saying, you've been working on Stranger for years now. Don't you think it's time you finished it? Yeah. But aside from that, I work at my own pace, and I write what I want to write. That's the other thing about self-publishing. I can write what I want to write. Stranger at its base is someone infiltrating a terrorist camp to stop them. It's not the most original idea, but I think it'll be a good story when it's finished. I have a story that I have to get back to over there called Under the Dark of the Moon. I wrote over 75,000 words and stopped. The story's not finished, I just stopped. Something else I have to get back to. It's my vampire novel, but I started it after the whole popularity of vampires decided to die down. But again, I'm not writing a vampire novel because I'm trying to cash in on a trend. I'm writing it because I've never written about vampires before. I wanted to see what I could do with them. When I liked the way the story was going, I just lost the thread, and was also marching headlong into a major action sequence, and the action sequences always get me in trouble. So, but I can write what I want. And while we're on the subject of originality, I mean, everybody likes to say everybody likes to complain that there are no original stories left. Well, of course there's no original stories. Everything has been told already, and most of them have been told by Shakespeare, and the rest were told by Neil Gaiman. So something else on Pinterest once was a list of things that writers should keep in mind. One of them, to paraphrase, was, that really great idea you had? Yeah, Neil Gaiman came up with it 15 years ago. The story you want to tell has never been told before, not by you. You can give two writers the exact same plot outline, you are going to get two different stories. Because no two people can tell the exact same story. Everybody's going to come to a story based on their own backgrounds, their own experiences. So. I'm sorry if this does seem to be rambling a bit, and if I'm stopping and looking off to the side. This was a spur of the moment decision to start recording this, and rather than stop and write a script and actually follow it, I'm just winging it. Next time I'll try and have some notes, but to continue, I've always been interested in science fiction and fantasy, mostly because they gave me the greatest escape from the real world. I remember as a child watching Star Trek, and it was actually Star Trek that got me interested in science fiction, and then along came Heinlein's Juveniles, and then his adult books, and then I was hooked. Then along came Star Wars, and that's what got me writing. Star Trek actually did give me hope for the future, because you could sit there and look at the bridge and you could see, okay, it's the United Nations there. There's a guy with a funny accent, there's an Oriental guy, there's a black woman, there's a guy from Russia. I thought the Russians were the bad guys, but I guess that's in the future they're not. So, it actually gave me hope that, yeah, maybe the future might be worth living in. So, and it also offered me the greatest flexibility in the stories that I could tell. I wasn't constrained with having to deal with what's going on in the real world, and that's the other thing that's kind of holding me back with the vampire novel, because it takes place in more or less the present day. I'm going to have to make some adjustments to the date, because it was originally based in 2012. Yeah, that's how slowly I write. Also, if you look at my work, my stories in as a whole, you'll notice that most of my characters are female. Most of my main characters are female. I don't know why that is, to be absolutely blunt with you. I don't know. I know it started after I read Heinlein's Friday. Friday is my favorite of all of Heinlein's novels. There's like one or two that I don't like. Don't get me started on The Number of the Beast. I'm forgetting who even wrote that one. That's how bad it is. But if I was to rationalize it a little bit, I would say that I'm just trying to write the characters that I want to read about. And maybe on some subconscious level, and yeah, I have admitted this to some people, that deep down inside I'm trying to come up with my own Aaron's son. If you don't know who Aaron's son is and don't know who Claudia Black is, I suggest you try yourselves back over here to YouTube, find Farscape, or anywhere on the internet. Find Farscape, watch the episodes, and then you'll see what I'm trying to reach for. It's a very high bar I've set for myself, because Aaron is such an incredible character and Claudia Black is such an incredible actress. Painful Admission, Part 1. So, let's see, we've been going for about a little over 25 minutes. I don't know if we're going to go much longer. Denise here, the main character of Strangers, is getting mad at me. And it's a quarter after 12. It is now the 21st. 21st? Yep, it is May 21st. Exactly 1 month from today, I turned 54. So, basically, we'll go into this as the last thing. The kinds of stories that I'm trying to tell. My idea of a story is an ordinary person thrust into a situation he or she is not ready for because of fill in the blank. The most of my characters are well-trained professional people. Denise here in Stranger, for example, is a government security agent, EarthGov Security, Division 2 in 2191. But she's just out of the academy. This is her first undercover assignment. I don't know if you really would want to put a rookie into that position, but she's the only enhanced human working in EarthGov Security, Division 2 anyway. Division 5 is full of them. There's another story that's in editing right now. It's called Upon a Far Distant Shore. The main character, Special Agent Artemis Yan, finds herself trapped in a little pocket dimension, and she has to find her way out. Ordinary people in extraordinary situations. Now, ordinary means different things to different people. Denise here in Stranger, and Artemis in Upon a Far Distant Shore, Carla and Adrastia in On a Cold Wind, and others. They're enhanced humans. They're genetically engineered to be stronger, faster, more flexible, sharper senses, and all that. For them, that's normal. In the vampire novel I talked about before, my main character is a vampire. That's normal for her. And just you get your main characters, you put them in a situation, and then you see what they do to get out. They're actually telling me the story, so I have to go with what they're telling me. I'm not directing them, they're directing me. And I also don't do a lot of planning on what the characters are like. I'll figure out some general things: height, weight, eyes, hair. I also, for example, do find pictures. If you look through the notebook here, you'll see an assortment of pictures of people that I think look like Denise, look like Nicola, her partner. But I don't go a lot into description. I know who they look like, but I'm not going to tell you, the reader, who they look like, because I want you to figure out who they look like. If you want to picture Denise as a black woman, knock yourself out. If you don't, you don't. You know, I'm not gonna say this is definitely who she looks like. That she is so high, her hair is this long, it is this exact shade, her eyes are this color, or she dresses like this. I'm not gonna tell you that. You'll get some general things: height, weight, eyes, hair. but I'm not gonna tell you who they look like. I'm not gonna tell you what actress I had in mind for Denise. Mostly because it's changed. When I first started it, I had one image for Denise, and then it kind of morphed into another one as I found an actress who actually fit the role better, and she can actually do action. Same thing with actors, actresses, and in that way, it just gives me a little bit more of a idea of what they're looking like. It's a little easier for me to visualize these stories in my head. I hear the characters' voices. They hear the actors and actresses' voices as I'm writing. But again, I'm not going to tell you who they are. So, now we're past 31 minutes. Okay, I think I'm going to be wrapping this up now, and sorry if this was a bit rambling. Like I said, this was a spur of the moment thing, so I didn't really have anything planned for it. So, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I will be cross-posting